Hello and welcome back to Transfer News Live. I'm joined today by Flav Bateman from the Fighting Cock to talk all things Spurs. Flav, how you doing, mate? You okay?
Yeah, mate, really good. Looking forward to what might happen in the summer and what business Spurs might do. So it's always an exciting time of the year for football fans, isn't it? Because you ain't got the jeopardy of football getting in the way, and all you can just do is dream big right now, which is
fantasy
lovely.
Fantasy stuff. Yeah, mate. Who would have thought a year ago there'd be a City fan and a Spurs fan sitting down and having a chat, and the City fan would be trophyless, and the Spurs fan would be full of it. With a European trophy to celebrate, mate. Who would have thought? What a world we live in.
I'd say you're welcome. Because I've spoken to a couple of City lads in since the final, and they're just like, thank God, because like the idea of Manchester United winning a trophy in the season that Man City didn't. We had. I think the vast majority of football was on Spurs' side for once, and in that final in Bilbao. But yeah, I mean, it is mental. I mean, the season Tottenham's had, the league form has been terrible, and we've played well against Man City.
You battered us, absolutely battered us, didn't you?
and it was that performance at the Etihad that we're all kind of holding on to. It was like this is what Ange Postecoglou is, right? When it clicks, when it works, it's unstoppable. But it was just and ironically, Man United away was the other big example of it. But it just became clear when the injuries hit. We lost Romero and Van de Ven, which is everything. That we just couldn't play that way without getting punished, and so the season was very difficult. But to round it off with a Europa League was bizarre and much needed. But as we found out, it didn't keep Ange's job.
And considering the way you beat us, it turned out not to be that impressive in the end, considering how bad we were following that. Because it was the start of our run, and we thought, maybe that was Spurs just having a beautiful day and City just having an off day. But we went on a stinking run.
That's right.
After that, so maybe it wasn't as good as it felt at the time. I mean, just to rob you a little.
Yeah, I was saying you're taking away the best 90 minutes of football I've watched in years. But thanks.
Yeah, just to diminish it a little bit. But you must have been buzzing about the final. I must admit, when I saw that goals creep in, Ben Johnson poke it in at the near post, mate. I don't celebrate for other sides, obviously, anywhere near to the level of City, but it wasn't far behind, mate. I must admit, it wasn't far behind.
Well, it was, I mean, we were 17 years of a trophy, and even then, that was a League Cup. And I know we shouldn't sniff at a League Cup, but realistically, it is the kind of, in terms of what you can possibly win, it's the sort of the fourth, if you have to choose them, fourth choice, like. And so really the only significant trophy we've lifted was in 91 for the FA Cup. So it was more than just 17 years. It was, nearing on 34, 35. And just this surreal feeling of watching your captain lift. I mean, you've seen it 26 times or something. I don't know how many trophies you've won, but I haven't. And watching Heung-min Son lift that trophy was a surreal thing. And we're still watching videos from the night now.
That's it.
You just can't stop.
I know the feeling. The first feeling, the FA Cup in 2012 was the first in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And that one, and obviously the Premier League the year after, that was difficult to replicate because of that. And like you, watching replays to this day, mate, I still watch replays over and over.
So what's that like then, right? So you're kind of like, I don't know, how many, 6 Premier League trophies deep now? Is it 6?
Yeah.
Is it kind of a shrug of the shoulders every time you win one?
Mate, I'm genuinely losing count, to be honest. I need to. I should know that. But it does get a little bit like, another one. And that one last season hurt, and not winning it has got that hunger back.
Yeah, you need to go through
that. It almost became the fourth in a row. Almost was like had a sense of relief about it, rather than like ecstasy and joy, And it was just like, oh yes, we did it. We stopped Arsenal and we got the fourth in a row. A record's been done. Plenty of joy associated with it, but
I've got a lot of fondness for both Man City and Man United. I know there are issues of things that that people will throw at Man City, and I have done in the past, but. Both clubs have stopped Arsenal from winning so much that I would have Man City win the title over Arsenal every day of the week, no matter how you guys have gone about it. It doesn't matter to me when Arsenal are at stake. It was beautiful.
We haven't had much rivalry. There was the fighting for fourth spot, wasn't there, with Bentley and Crouch's own goal at the Etihad, Harry Redknapp being the manager,
right.
things like that.
2010, yeah, that'd be it. And then, you could actually take me back to the worst experience I've ever had watching the football where, mate, is it Macken who scored a header? Do you remember this?
I call it one of the best FA Cup comebacks you'll ever see in your life. Paul Bosvelt, Sylvain Distin, Sean Wright-Phillips was offside, but no VAR, so that made it 3-3. And then John Macken in like the 90th minute. We had 10 men as well. I know.
Barton was sent off at half time.
Yeah,
I still haven't really recovered from that game. That was Spurs in a nutshell.
That's a big moment in City's history. But let me talk to you about Ange now, because he's gone. How do you feel about that? Because I'm seeing a lot of mixed feelings around the sacking of Ange Postecoglou. And while I get it, I think there's almost a case of we'll never know now if that was going to become something special. That was a stepping stone to more success, potentially.
Yeah, I think there's no right answer and no wrong answer around Ange Postecoglou, really, because obviously he's won us the competition, and we're in a situation where you could look to the future and go, let's fingers crossed he gets it right. Romero and Van der Ven stay fit. You can build around those two, and it works. But it was more like a Hail Mary rather than a logistical plan that might work out. I think that while he should have been given another go, because what football fans know very little in comparison to these managers, to be given a chance to get it right. And if we got it right with him, that would have been special, because I think everybody is very fond of him. The few didn't like his sort of abrasive sort of way about him and the kind of cupping of the ears at Chelsea away, as if you saw that. But there were some issues there for sure, but it was a very stressful period. But I think ultimately the vast majority of Spurs fans wanted him to get it right. And so they were disappointed. I was disappointed when he was sacked. But then when the dust settles and you think about what's most likely, what's football taught us in the past? It's taught us that winning a cup doesn't change the trajectory of a football club, and certainly not the plight of a manager. David Moyes got sacked shortly after winning the Conference League, and as we know, Ten Hag was a disaster after he won the FA Cup, a trophy that did they deserve it really? Given Coventry were through if it weren't for a toenail. So the point is
and we were drunk in the final as well.
That's right, yeah, I remember, yeah. But that's what I'm saying, is it's like it doesn't tell you much. So I can now also understand the need for someone new, although it does leave a bitter taste. But that's Daniel Levy's job, isn't it? He's not a supporter. He's got to look at the information and make a decision based on that, not emotion.
Yeah, I can respect the logic, but it's an emotional game. So there is emotion associated with it. Sentiment is often applied when making these big decisions. And I think a lot of Spurs fans will have grown a huge soft spot for Ange Postecoglou as a result of what he did. And then to see him go without even really getting a chance to play another game of football properly in front of the fans and celebrate it with the fans and lift the trophy again, bring it home, that type of feeling. And it's got to be disappointing, but I get it, because I think he will, like you said, Dan, that Levy must have learnt the lessons or watched the lessons not be learnt by United and Erik ten Hag, and think, because the fan pressure was so big from United to say you must keep Erik ten Hag. And as a result of that, they paid the price, and it was the wrong decision ultimately. And if they'd brought in Ruben Amorim straight away, who knows what last season could have been like with him getting an extra transfer window. But
we... fans, we've got a lot of opinions, right? We're both working in an industry where it's all about opinions, but we really don't know our ass from our elbow, really. If we're being
we're winging it.
We're all winging it, right? We're just
really,
giving opinions, but we have no idea what it takes to run a football club. And Man United fans calling for Ten Hag to stay is emotion based, and that should be the lifeblood of football. But making proper logical decisions isn't what typical football fans do. They run on emotion. And the game is beautiful because of emotion. Yeah. But like I said, I would have given Ange Postecoglou another go, but I understand the reasoning for why he was sacked. So, as harsh as it was. So, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised by Daniel Levy's.
Yeah, he's cutthroat, isn't he? And as much as he's not winning many Spurs fans over with some of the lack of spending and poor spending when it has been spent.
Yeah.
I think that the businessman nature came to the forefront here, and he really was just cutthroat, wasn't he? And if it works, Thomas Frank, in a year's time, we could be celebrating the decision. Well, you will be celebrating the decision of Daniel Levy to bring him in. So tell me, what do you think about Thomas Frank? Are you pleased?
Yeah, I think so. I think originally when you're sort of thinking about who might place Postecoglou, and you're thinking, well, the three names that were in the hat, for want of a better expression, for the job, they were Thomas Frank, Marco Silva, and Iraola. And you're thinking about all of them, you're like, do they really move the needle a great deal? But if you had the choice between the three, I think Thomas Frank was the right answer, because he offers and brings some of the pragmatism and that we've been lacking for the last 2 years under Postecoglou. And we've got good footballers in our squad that are so much better than 17th. I mean, I still think that we've got a top 8 squad, possibly even a top 6 squad, if you just apply a different tactic in using them, and not necessarily, I think if you give Postecoglou Manchester City's side, you would see you would see what he's trying to do, but we don't have Rodri in the 6.
No,
right? You've got kids that are not used to playing there. We've been relying on an 18-year-old in Berival in midfield, and Archie Gray's been playing out position as centre back. You can't do anything like that. I mean, these players are great, and but they need to be nurtured and developed. And so Frank will do that. Is my roundabout answer to your question, is that I think he'll give opportunities in a sort of more guarded and sensible environment than they had previously, and you'll see better performances for it. Like, I genuinely think now that Frank's here, and we don't have to worry as Spurs fans going into every game thinking how many are we going to get beaten by today. There were parts in that, really, when the injuries were really on top, where you would lose the ball around the opponent's box, and you're like, Vicario's going to have to make a save here. Like, that's how bad we were, and how sort of foolhardy it was at times. So, Frank offers something completely different, but we've seen what we're hanging on to in terms of the quality of the football, how he played when he had some of the better players for Brentford in the Championship, and that was really kind of sexy possession-based football. But you'll only do it when we have a significant advantage with the players, and going to, play Arsenal this year, it kind of felt like how this could be well scary, and then Frank won't allow that to happen. So there will be times when you've got a back five or wing backs, or and we've got to get used to that, because it's been completely different for a long time.
That's the point I was going to make. Well, there's two. I think on the face of it, there's two positives here that I think Spurs fans can get excited about with Thomas Frank. Is the fluidity to his system, the open-endedness to his system. He's not rigid. Postecoglou was very plan A, and plan B is enforcing plan A. There is no plan B. This is the way we're doing it. You like it or lump it, Whereas Thomas Frankie, like you said, he plays with 3 at the back, or with wing backs, or with 2 sitters in midfield, plays with 2 up top sometimes with a single striker. So he's adaptable, Thomas Frank. That's one of the major positives that I think Spurs fans will be excited about, because it's pragmatic, and you're not going to get as hurt as much, to the point where you get 4 put past you easily and things like that. So
he played 8 different formations. He started 8 different formations in the.
There you go.
In the Premier League last season, so exactly. It just shows you,
which is the polar opposite of Postecoglou's approach, isn't it? In terms of the style, at least.
Yeah.
And then I think the other style is people person, and I actually thought Postecoglou in his first year was a people person, but he quickly changed, didn't he? It became very spiky, very hostile, in particular with those interviews with the press. And when you lose the press, people underestimate the power of the press when they start writing those headlines about you, and then you give off that impression in those interviews where you're coming across so negative and so hostile. And it's just an uphill struggle from that point on when you lose the press. And we've seen so many managers over the years lose their heads with the press in the middle of a press conference, where they bite at every single question. And it just generates an aura, a negative aura around the club. And Thomas Frank is just not going to do that. He's very lovable. We saw that in his first interview with the official interview with the club.
Yeah.
And he was so likable, and he delivers his points so well. And I'm getting real Pochettino vibes, where he's an arm around the shoulder type guy, and I think he'll win over the players quickly and get them playing. So, I think you've got something to be excited about there, to be honest.
Yeah. And his ability to work with young players and coach players and consistently develop them is really exciting. Obviously, the kind of approach that Spurs have had to the transfer market for at least since Langer came in a couple of years ago is to find and sweep up as much of the best young talent we can find in Europe. Goal released their top 50 young players in Europe, and we had 5 of them in the top 50. So, given his track record of being able to do that and carrying players up through the Championship into the Premier League and them still making up a large part of the starting lineup, shows what a good coach he is on top of everything else. And like you say, he's like affable and likable, and there's a sense of calm with him that we haven't had for a long time. You mentioned Pochettino. The best period of following Spurs was the 2 or 3 years he had in the kind of mid-teens, if you want, where it felt like the club, holistically, but also on the pitch, was moving forward in the right direction. The fans were on board, and then the stadium happened, and it kind of, we left and had to go and play in Wembley, and they built the new stadium, COVID and stuff like that, and it kind of derailed Spurs. It derailed a lot of football clubs, to be fair.
Yeah.
And then we kind of went for Mourinho, and then Conte was madness. It was great for a short period of time, but just quickly descended into madness. Nuno in the middle of that, and Postecoglou's done a lot of good work in bridging that gap between what the bin fire that Conte left to a club, certainly in the first season that he was with us, that we can feel good about again. But that, you're right about Frank's sort of approach and calmness. It does kind of feel like it could be closer to that Pochettino reign, we hope. And there was a lot of criticisms and questions about Pochettino when he came in, about having no European pedigree of any sort, and he got us to a Champions League final. So
and he got that. I'll never forget the. I can't remember the journalist's name now, but there was one particular journalist who reports for Spurs.
Yeah,
called him a clown.
Yeah, that's a mate of mine, Dan Kilpatrick.
Yeah, it was shoved down his throat a bit there, wasn't it? After that,
yeah, definitely. And we did a podcast with Daniel on one of my podcasts called The Lab, and we talked a lot about that altercation and his, what happened. And he didn't call him a clown. He said that the final was he could either be a hero or a clown depending on how this final goes. That's right. What he said. Okay. But to his credit, Dan, he did actually say I shouldn't have framed it like that. It was way too abrasive, and it was fair on.
That's fair enough. Yeah. Well, this happy ending for Spurs fans in the end, really, wasn't it? But tell me what you wanted to see on the pitch from Thomas Frank, because I know we've just touched on the idea that he's going to be fluid. There's going to be potentially different systems, and also mentioning the fact that you guys are being linked with some of Thomas Frank's former players in Wissa and Mbeumo. And could you see a front two now at Spurs? And if that's the case, what happens to Solanke? Whether you've just signed Matthias Tell and players like that.
So Matthias Tell was, he's 19, right? And you've got to remember how difficult it is for a 19-year-old player to be effective in the Premier League. It's very rare that someone that young can consistently perform, and he's definitely got something, but it needs work. And if the opportunity to bring Tell in is there for a cut price deal, then I think we'd be mad not to at least try, because I think there's going to be a special player there in 2 or 3 years, but he's not quite ready yet.
Although he looked raw last season a bit, didn't he?
He looked, like he did. He looked like a 19-year-old kid, and that's you forget. You kind of think like you think about Manchester. Sorry, what am I talking about? You think about Bayern Munich and him coming from there, and it kind of think because this comes, if you're a young player leaving Bayern Munich, there's almost like a tax in expectation. But you quickly realise that the Bundesliga isn't the Premier League, and a 19-year-old kid is still a 19-year-old kid if he does have a reputation. And you got to think about Guardiola's management of young players and not exposing them too quickly, and how well Foden was managed, for example, into the side. It wasn't. I know he was playing a lot of football by the time he was 19. He made his debut at 17, didn't he?
But they were calling out for him to start earlier. City fans wanted it much earlier than it was actually delivered. So you're right.
But they know time. Again, Man United, they do know what they're doing.
Yeah, so it's surprising, isn't it?
Yeah. So it made sense. So it's like 29 million euros, and it won't be up front, and there's Kane money still owed to us, so it made sense. Vissa's an interesting one. Again, a player who arrived at Brentford to little sort of fanfare. It's like 10 million euros, I think, from France. And it took him time to get up to speed, and it took Frank a fair amount of time to get him doing what he did last season, which is like 24 goal contributions in the Premier League, 19 goals. It's insane. Like, it's so difficult to deliver that in a system that Brentford employed under Thomas Frank. So, yeah, I think the sensible thing would be that let's see what he can do with Dom Solanke first. I mean, he's £65 million a year ago. You don't give up on that, and he's had a good season for Spurs in a difficult domestic campaign. He's been out for about 2 months. I think he was out with a knee injury. Yeah. So I think just to bring Wissa in now, it just how much he's going to cost? How long's he got? He's got a couple of years left in his contract. Maybe another. June 30th, 26. So he's going to cost a fortune to get out of Brentford. Yeah. So, and if they're losing Mbeumo as well, I can't see.
Would you take? Obviously, it's between you and United, as the reports, but it sounds more likely to be United. But still, Spurs are in the. You're getting conflicting reports there, but
So a couple of. I'd love him because the right hand side is a problem for Tottenham. Yeah. So we got Brennan Johnson, who Thomas Frank wanted to take to Brentford. So he likes Johnson as a player, but what Mbeumo has, Brennan Johnson doesn't, and he will offer something different on that right hand side. And we've got a lot of games to play, so we need backup. But other than Brennan Johnson, you can put Kulusevski out there as well. But I think, based on what Frank said, he prefers Kulusevski in the middle. Dejan said many, many times that he wants to play in the middle. So we need someone on that right-hand side. And if you believe the reports before the transfer window opened, it was left wing and right wing that we wanted to kind of sort out. And Mbeumo would be a big thing. The reports are that he does want to go to Man United, but Man United can't seem to agree a deal with Brentford. And the sort of financial situation at United, while they will always have money to spend on transfers, they're not a million miles away from PSR issues. So, and Thomas Frank is here now, and the fact that this has gone deadly quiet, I just got a feeling, he's going to end up at Tottenham, and that would be the fifth time this season we've bent him over. So if it does happen, it'll be
bending him over, mate.
Mate,
happy. Yeah.
Mate, there is a time
we're synced like that. Aren't
we? Well, there was a time, mate. Like the idea of beating Man United in 5 years seemed impossible, and the fact that we've beaten 4 times in a season just shows you how far they've fallen, really. Which is fine.
On the subject of United and Spurs, let me ask you. That's a realistic question, because asking you who's closer to winning the league, both of you are quite a distance away at the minute. Let's put a more slightly realistic target out of United and Spurs, considering where you finished last season and the fact that you pipped them to that piece of silverware. Out of the two clubs, United and Spurs, who is closer to finishing in the top 4 next season?
Yeah, I think Spurs. I think it's without question Tottenham. And also, you could extend that to say what would be a better move for Mbeumo. And you think with Frank there, you think it's definitely Spurs. Look, on top of the fact that last season for Tottenham, it was down to the decision to abandon the league in pursuit of the Europa League. Yeah. That Postecoglou couldn't find a way of getting these players to play better, even though there's clearly a better side in there than the one we saw in the domestic campaign. On top of that, we're a really well-run football club. There are frustrations with Daniel Levy, and I am frustrated with him. But there are talks about takeovers at Spurs and maximising the PSR buffer that we have. With a new manager, I think, I don't see a world unless something seismic happens. Even if they get Mbeumo over and we don't, that there's a world where they finish above Tottenham next year. I think we'll finish top 8, and I think top 4 is difficult, very difficult. But out of the two, I'm a Spurs fan. I'm always going to say Spurs. But what do you think?
I think, you've already mentioned United's ability to spend, and I think that's where the danger comes from United, and they've got that history of just being able to do things, even when they're down in the dirt. They just do things, United, don't they? When they got that FA Cup under Erik ten Hag, and I mean, that's like, they were absolutely useless in that season, and they still managed to get a piece of silverware. And I thought they were going to do it against you in the Europa League, but they didn't. But I do agree with you. There's a better structure. There's a better feel-good factor around Spurs right now. The Thomas Frank situation adds to that. Whereas they're sort of like carrying over the feeling of last season United with Ruben Amorim, who didn't end the season on a high note, to put it politely. Whereas you've got a high note, plus you've added to it with players coming in, as well as the fact that you've got the new manager syndrome, which always gives an extra boost to the club and players as well. So.
Yeah, and we've got in the short term, we've got the £100 million or euros that you get from competing in the Champions League. So I think the trajectory of Tottenham's much higher. I don't really believe in Manchester United much as a footballing entity anymore. Really, they're a massive club living off the reign of Alex Ferguson, and because of the successes that they achieved during that period, they're always going to be relevant, and players are always going to want to sign for them. But it doesn't mean anything if the decision making is incorrect or poor. And the Glazers I understand so much why they're hated, because it's their decision making and their inability to build infrastructure around the football club, like the training ground and building the stadium, and feel like it's a football club moving forward, that has caused this problem. And now Ineos have come in, and if the reputation of the club is worse than it's ever has been, do you have any faith at all that Ratcliffe is going to get this right? Because I don't. And no. if he can't get it right, and the team that he's put together can't get it right, then Man United will never, ever, ever return to what they were. And there's an argument to say that Man United will never return, regardless of what happens, because of what they achieved was so great. And because of what Manchester City did, the restrictions on how people can spend mean that Man United's potential revenue generation is never going to give them enough advantage over the other teams that are already there. So there's a lot of reconciliation that Man United fans have got to do, and it must be painful for them, given the fact they're looking at Man City and you guys are doing what you're doing. So I'd rather be Spurs at the moment.
Yeah. That was music to my ears. It was like poetry to me as a City fan. I was absorbing every word there, Flav. I loved it. But there's a few more names you guys have been linked with.
Yeah.
Slightly more in the unrealistic department with Simons. Bit on the dreamy side, but I mean, why not? Why not? And then not? Jared Bowen, more from the fact that how would you prize him out of West Ham, being West Ham through and through, is there's a little bit of an issue there. I think, would he want to do that? And kudos as well, which I don't think that's unrealistic actually.
No,
kudos, but
so it depends on how much they want. So there is a Twitter account called ex-West Ham or ex-WHU employee. And he's extremely well connected. I know this for a fact. Extremely well connected in the football club, in as much as he's connected to the boardroom. And if he's saying that he's available for £85 million and Spurs are interested, then you're pretty much guaranteeing that to be a fact. So certainly that West Ham would let him go for that price. But
this is Jared Bowen or Kudus?
Sorry, I'm Kudus at this stage.
Kudus,
I don't know what he said about Bowen. So 85 million is crazy for Kudus, but I think 50 million feels right. And again, it's this right-hand side of midfield and he can play across the front three, and so can Bowen. But Jared Bowen feels too connected to West Ham to make that move to Tottenham. It has happened in the past, like Defoe and Carrick, but Bowen is, he's something else.
It's more frowned upon nowadays as well. I think, especially the heritage of football clubs is probably a little bit more respected than it was back days. Like Sol Campbell going the other way. And
I don't know. That was pretty bad. It still remains. But I think because of how Bowen has been taken into the hearts of West Ham, whereas Defoe was still really young and Carrick was really young, they didn't want to see them go. But it wasn't the same as Bowen. Like Bowen's captain, West Ham. That's a different thing completely. So I can't see that. I don't think Kudus is out of question.
He's a dribbling sensation, Kudus, as well, because I did a video on Doku and Semenyo, and those two had the highest dribbling numbers in the previous 2 years. Semenyo when he was at Girona, and Doku in his first season at City. And Kudus was the only player above them in the whole of the European leagues. So in terms of what you're going to get if you get him, you get one of the best one-on-one fullback devourers in world football right now. So he's a sensation in that department.
And that's the exact opposite of what Brennan Johnson is. So yes, it's about diversifying and becoming dynamic and having options. And he would definitely solve some of those. He's a bit of a hothead. I see him. He could have been sent off 3 times in the space of about 40 seconds at Spurs last year. He did get sent off, but he
eventually.
At the end of that, sort of, he just broke down and started headbutting and swinging.
Yeah, I remember now. You triggered my memory there. I remember.
Obviously, something's up, but I like the sound of him. And obviously, Xavi, you mentioned Xavi Simons,
Xavi Simons as well. Yeah,
the reason why that won't happen is because, well, I'd assume that it won't happen is because of Daniel Levy. And here is like, you could see Simmons signing for Arsenal. Arsenal could do that deal. That wouldn't surprise anybody. When Declan Rice went to Arsenal, that didn't surprise anybody. And it's about why Spurs don't operate in that world. And we need to be, because there's no doubt this kid is great. I know he had an injury. He was out for about 20 games, and he hasn't quite recaptured the form that he had before that. I think it was an ankle injury, if I remember rightly. But there's levels to this, and he exists amongst some of the very best in world football. And but I'm under no illusions that this will happen, because we don't seem to operate in that field. We don't want to go above and beyond and encourage these players that should be playing for the very best clubs to come to Tottenham instead. And until we develop that, and maybe we never will, but then, when I'm speaking here and I'm thinking about City, when have Man City done it? They tried to do it with Kane, they did it with Grealish, but by and large, generally, it was sensible acquisitions. Haaland, for sure. But you think
that was 55 million.
I know the deal was fantastic, but he was the best striker in Europe, and you went and got him. My point is that a lot of times that
it's not just a figure. You're talking about the stature of the player.
Yeah, often these players come in and they're functional and they work for a certain. They fit inside Guardiola's system, and then they then become the player. I'm not suggesting Man City don't spend big on players. They do, and like Guardiola, for example, was £80 million. But
he's a big one.
Yeah, but there is an approach to that works if you buy the right players for the manager. And I don't know what Spurs are going to do, but it would feel great to bring in a ready-made, borderline world-class player, because there's a couple of times where that's happened in the last 30 years or so. Probably Jurgen Klinsmann and maybe Van der Vaart, maybe.
Yeah.
So it would be nice, but
headline grabber.
Yeah. Like you sit down and go, I can't believe we've done this. Yeah. That would feel great, but I don't know. Maybe you got to be a bit more sensible. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean he's got a 51 million price tag. Reports are, so it's not that expensive, but
I think it's the competing with.
It's who you're going up against. Yeah, absolutely. So that's incomings. Tell me about potential outgoings, because there's a link here for James Maddison. And that was actually coinciding with Xavi Simons to make way for Xavi Simons.
Well, we've been linked with like Eza, Simons.
Yeah, Eza's the good one. Yeah,
yeah, and but you're like, well, where do they fit in? Like we were having a conversation about whether we want Mbeumo or Eza, and yesterday, and they're not the same. They don't play in the same position. Like Eza's best performance is a 10. So if you're buying him in for 68 million, you don't play him out wide. You buy him because of what he's effective at doing, and that is playing through the middle for Crystal Palace. So you're trying to buy that. So we've already got Maddison and Kulusevski to play the 10 as well. So I just can't see that 10 being a priority at all.
I'm a big fan of Kulusevski as well. Yeah. I see him being the nucleus of Tottenham And when he's on his day, I think he's just such a good all-rounder. Even in the 10, he's got defensive attributes and ability to press and nick the ball off players. He's a horrible player to play against, and he's got
Pep
a goal
likes
in him. And big fan.
Remember him saying he's a great water player.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we have options, and this is the thing: is like while you asked me about outgoings, I don't think there'll be a great deal. I think Son could, because he feels like he's the end of his. It feels like the end for the journey. He's been here for 10 years. He's a legend. He's more of a legend than Harry Kane will ever be. Right, and more less. It's not even about the trophy. That the trophy rounded it off nicely, but the fact that he signed a contract when Kane was trying to leave just shows you everything about how committed to the football club he was. And he could have played anywhere. He was 4 years ago, he was one of the best forwards in world football, and he would legitimately would have gone anywhere. But he didn't. He chose to stay, and that means everything to a supporter. It's that emotional connection we talked about at the start.
There's been a noticeable decline in him, I think, from the outside looking in. There's been the substitute appearance in the Europa League final. I noticed. You're not got that turn of speed anymore and that presence about you. And but there's no denying what he's done for Spurs, and it felt like a reward for him for all the efforts in the years before to stick around, get that trophy. If anyone deserved it, it was him.
I think absolutely, yeah. I think that is the case, and we loved it. We loved the fact that happened more than anything else. But players like him age quickly, and Doku, for example, at 31, you can't imagine him tearing it up in the Premier League. They just burn bright.
Kind of Vardy as well, the athletic type. It's a noticeable drop off in a matter of a year sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, and what we fear for Son, if he stays, is that the narrative around him will change, that he's not good enough, and fans will get frustrated with him. And it's just like, if there's an opportunity to move him on, and he gets another go at it at a club that, or in a league that isn't quite as competitive as the Premier League, I think that'd be a great thing for him. And if he stayed, he'll be celebrated and supported. But I just know what football fans are like, right? And if things don't go well for him, it'll just be a shame to sully what has already been,
I know what you mean.
All the work he's done.
Before we shoot off, give me your predictions, mate. Tell me what your... I know the transfer window will dictate a lot of your predictions, and you'll probably have a different prediction depending on the players that come in at the end of the transfer window. So, but at this point right now, where are you expecting Spurs to finish in the Premier League table next season?
Well, Brentford finished 10th, wasn't it? I don't know, right around about that.
Yeah, mid-table. Yeah,
mid-table. If you can do that with that Brentford side, then Spurs can definitely finish top 6. And I think we surprised a lot of people. I think people think that the reason why we're 17th is because the squad isn't good enough. Some people might do. And I think we're going to surprise a lot of people, and we're going to be difficult to beat for once. And so my boldest prediction would be 4th. My most conservative prediction will be 7th.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's reasonable.
Even if
I tend to agree with you. I agree with you, to be fair. Yeah, I think there's going to be a definite improvement on last season. And I think we've got you second as well, City. We've got you second game of the season as well, so we'll find out.
It's away, isn't it?
Yeah,
well, home place, for you.
Yeah, our place. But you're notoriously the team, our bogey side. We've got rid of that a little bit in the last year or two. We've beaten you at your place. We finally scored a goal at your place. Took about 3 years to do that.
Yeah, but you got to remember, wasn't that in the season that we all wanted you to win anyway?
Yeah, and then Son, forever now known as a Manchester City legend, missing that one-on-one.
100%. Still, look, don't get me wrong. I never want to relive that night again. It was wanting your own team to lose is a bizarre thing, but I wouldn't change a single minute of it.
That was a beautiful moment. Ortega making the save as well.
When he went through, we were going, no!
Yeah, the Arsenal fans accused him of doing it on purpose as well. I love it.
Yeah, I hope he did. I hope he did.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thanks very much for joining us, Flav. We may get you on again, maybe towards the end of the transfer window. See if things have changed, potentially, if there's any incomings that are official that we could talk about and get more excited about next season for Spurs. Really appreciate you joining us today, Flav. Thanks very much, mate.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for joining us on Transfer News Live. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you're new. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.